Did the washer-dryer challenge just spin cycle out of control? Are the results a total wash? Has Grunty just taken our hero to the dry cleaners? Tune in to next week's exciting conclusion to the washer-dryer challenge to find out. Same laundromat time, same laundromat channel.
Hello, I'm Grin of Channel Grim and Grin, but you may well know me better as the voice and or narrator from the washer-dryer challenge. Well, it's been a fun adventure, but it does seem to answer the questions postulated at the end of the previous video that it's come to a rather unsuccessful end. Yes indeed, it seems that no matter what you do, when you enter the final boss battle area, the game will immediately transform you back into the bearer bird. Now, this is obviously a rather sad ending to such a fun adventure, but there is a silver lining. You see, Disney have seen fit to lend us the same technology they used to bring back Peter Cushing as Tarkin for Rogue One, and so, through the wonders of CGI, we can now simulate how the game would have ended were it not impossible. And so now, I present to you through the wonders of computer graphics and science, the ending that the washer-dryer challenge truly deserves.
Well, here we are, folks. After over a year of the washer-dryer challenge, it's time for the final showdown. There were those who said this battle would never happen, but those people never factored in the power of Disney magic. Yes, indeed, it's amazing what they can do with computers these days, and through that power and some extremely pro gameplay, it's time to take Gruntilda down a peg or two. She thinks she's so good up there on her broomstick, but unfortunately for her, broomstick's not that great for a fighter plane. Instead, they're only good for sweeping. And the thing about sweeping is, much like making sweeping statements, they're very rarely that accurate. To which you may well protest, but Grim, weren't those words of which you just spoke themselves a sweeping statement? And they were indeed, but before you follow up your interruption by saying doesn't that make them inaccurate, no it doesn't, because I said sweeping statements were rarely accurate, and the rare exception to this rule is when I'm making them. But to briefly interrupt this tirade to actually get back on topic, what we're currently doing is fighting Gruntilda, who is swooping down at us on her sweeper, and after a few times that she does this, she stalls and splutters around a bit, giving us time to give her the good old-fashioned washer-dryer headbutt. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever headbutted a washer-dryer machine, I don't know, maybe you were in a sorority or something, but I can tell you, it blooming hurts. Which explains why after being headbutt by a washer-dryer a few too many times, after she's tried out the same failed tactic once again a few too many times, she finally realizes that it's simply not working out, and instead opts to change tactics. Her new plan seems to be to float a little bit far away and just continuously lob fireballs at me like she's Mario or something, and that's not really such a bad idea, as she is in fact really quite accurate. However, if washer-dryers are really good at one thing, without dipping too far into stereotypes, it's firing eggs at witches as a projectile. And so, while she may be a little bit far away, she's not so far away that she can easily escape the pointedly precise paltry projectiles peppering the peevishly pale perilous pythoness Pip. Gruntilda, who is, though a pretty good bad witch, is clearly not a master tactician, as just like her previous tactic, when this one proved to be entirely ineffectual, she just kept trying to do it. Now, I'm not really sure the logic behind this, but then again, I'm not a witch, so maybe that's why. Also, while we're not on the subject, can we talk about Gruntilda's magic broom? Has anyone else noticed that the broom clearly has googly eyes, which means that if it's anything like anything else in the game, then it's probably sentient. And so Gruntilda's mount is not just some inanimate object, but at most a companion, her Kazooie to Banjo's Banjo, or at the very least, some sort of pet. Now, why I bother to mention this is, while Gruntilda does rise again after this game, I'm not sure that her broomstick ever actually does. It is mentioned in Banjo-Tooie in passing, but it's never seen, and in Banjo-Kazooie, it's been replaced by a mechanical replica. And when we, later on, knock Gruntilda off of her broom, I'll slow it down so we can have a good look at it, but right now, I'm going to postulate that Gruntilda's broom does not make it out alive from this battle. but that's just a theory pertaining to the genre of video games. But the fate of the broomstick aside, with this final shot meeting its mark, Grunty's finally giving up on her fatally flawed tactic. And in doing so, she tells us that she's off up in the air, I suppose finally realizing that hovering slightly off the ground, when she can presumably fly wherever she wants, is a really strange approach to trying to kill someone. And it's probably not such a bad idea for her to take this battle in the skies, as, after all, since we've been gallivanting through her worlds, she's no doubt watched my multiple attempts at flying, and no doubt in doing so, has seen me fail a great many times. Yes, indeed, whether it be hitting the wrong button and ground pounding into the ground from the height of a skyscraper, or failing to hit multiple snowmen multiple times, the washer dryer's record for aerial success is admittedly somewhat patchy. However, this is not some previous level, some backwards game world. No, this is the final showdown, the last battle between Gruntilda and the washer dryer. If we succeed, we prove once and for all to Mumbo Jumbo and all the naysayers that laundry appliances can do anything that bears and birds can. If we fail, Gruntilda performs weird experiments with black magic on our sister, and we're forced to wash and dry Gruntilda's gross knickers. And in light of those stakes, it should come as no surprise that of Grunty's aerial nonsense, we made short work of. And while that grammar was not strictly accurate, what was accurate was my amazing aerial attacks. And so now it's time to move on to the next phase and fight Gruntilda on her next frontier. However, fortunately, we're not going at it alone. You see, all of those gingers we rescued throughout the game worlds are finally coming back and paying their debts. Which strongly enforces the long-held opinion that I've had that you should always help out strangers, especially when they're small, colourful, imp-like sprites, because you never know when you could really use them. But Grim, you might well object. You shouldn't only be helping strangers because you expect something in return. That's a terrible way to live and a total perversion of morality, you might well add. Well, to that I say, hush you, take it up with Aesop if you're not happy, because that's basically the moral of the story behind The Lion and the Mouse. It's not that you should be kind to strangers just because it's the right thing to do. No, as far as Aesop's concerned, you should be kind to strangers because sometimes it pays off. And in the case of these gingers, well, it certainly has. Having freed them from their stone prisons, like they were the temple beasts from Power Rangers the movie, they've thrown themselves into Gruntilda and knocked her off of her broom. In fact, let's have a slow motion replay there. Yes, indeed, they've not only knocked her off her broom, but the broom is most certainly dead and thoroughly shattered. And so with that, we enter into the final phase of this long-awaited showdown. Gruntilda is finally grounded, not quite as grounded as I hope she soon will be, and the almighty Gingernator concealed within a stone monolith has risen from the depth, hoping that the legends hold true and soon his 1,000 years of imprisonment will be shortly over. You know, considering that everyone paints our protagonist as a bit of a hero, it should really be noted that until the Watcher Dryer's life was immediately affected, aka they stole his sister, he really didn't seem to have much to say about all of the slavery and horrible things that Gruntilda was doing to the inhabitants of his immediately neighbouring lands. I mean, sure, she stole an entire race of gingers and imprisoned their god in a stone statue, but why should that concern our hero? He's busy playing Game Boy. And while we're talking about gods, I can't help but wonder just how powerful Gruntilda is. Do all of the worlds within Gruntilda's lair actually exist within Gruntilda's lair, or is Gruntilda's lair filled with portals that lead to those worlds? And if that's not the case, and those worlds do exist in Gruntilda's lair, were they creations of her power? And if indeed she is some sort of godlike deity who is able to manipulate the matter within her own realm, then what exactly does that make Log? He seems to have power over Gruntilda and Banjo, and yet the worlds and creatures of his own making seem to be distinctly mechanical. If Log, being the Lord of Games, holds dominion over all things within video games, then why is it that Gruntilda, who presumably is a character within a video game that Log holds dominion over, seems to have the ability to create realms of her own with more realistic environments and natural-looking creatures? And what of Mumbo Jumbo? Mumbo's Mountain is the very first world in Gruntilda's lair, and so therefore presumably Mumbo is actually a creation of Gruntilda, and if that's the case, how is it that he's able to live outside of Gruntilda's worlds? And indeed, Mumbo himself has his own magical powers that he uses for his own agency that goes against Gruntilda's wishes in the same way that Gruntilda does for Log. It's all very complicated and perhaps should be the subject of its own video, as what's going on at the moment is far more important. Yes, indeed, freed from his unnatural bonds, the Great Gingernator absorbs the power of the lesser Ginger deities and becomes ready to take down what we can only now assume from my previous postulation is probably some form of god. Where exactly, theologically speaking, the Great Gingernator falls along the lines of hierarchy when it comes to Log, Gruntilda, Mumbo Jumbo, and himself, I really don't know, and it really at this point doesn't matter. As after all, whether he is normally the lesser powerful or the more powerful, being that he's been recently sealed in stone, I'd assume he's usually fairly downtrodden. On the day, he clearly has the upper hand. Yes, indeed, pummeling Gruntilda mercilessly, we see the old hag shake in fear, and know that our long journey was not in vain. We have, my friend, travelled across many lands and fought many a foe, collected many a jigging and music note, and freed and helped several helpless creatures. But now it all comes to an end. The day is won, and the washer-dryer reigns victorious. The evil Gruntilda responsible for all of our dramas plummets to her death and no doubt will never be seen again, or at least, if seen again, will have far less flesh. And perhaps best of all, I hope Mumbo Jumbo is hungry, as for claiming the washer-dryer would be unable to finish the game, is going to have to eat his words. And so, as this long-run journey comes to an end, I must thank all of you who have followed us along the way. It's been a lot of fun, it's been a really enjoyable challenge, and it's nice to know that perhaps this is the first time anyone has ever attempted the washer-dryer challenge and has come out victorious. We, of course, didn't entirely play fairly, and for our victory have Disney to partly thank, and no doubt some of you will object to these methods and claim that what I did was cheating, which, of course, well, it certainly was, but in my defense, such a cheat was definitely not off-brand. After all, the washer-dryer is itself a cheat, and so an adventure that started as a cheat has now gotten ended as one. And through doing so, we turned an unwinnable situation into a victory, and if the great Captain Kirk can cheat in the Kobayashi Maru test, we certainly can cheat in the washer-dryer challenge. And so, with all of that said, and as this comes to an end, thanks for watching not only this, but the entirety of the washer-dryer challenge. It's been a great deal of fun, not only to do, but also to have all of you watching along and commenting along with it. Thanks to anyone who ever liked any of the videos, or commented with a funny comment or advice, or pointing out that I had missed something ludicrous. It was a lot of fun to read, and was all a great deal of fun. And so, I suppose in closing, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle, and you've been watching the very final episode of the washer-dryer challenge. If you've not seen the rest of the challenge, then you've done it in the wrong order, but not to worry, a link on the screen now will allow you to watch the entire playlist.